Hi, and thank you for tuning into the Nature Conversations podcast. I'm Dr Adam Forbes. I'm a forest ecologist who specialises in the restoration of New Zealand's forest ecosystems. This podcast isn't about me, however. The purpose of the Nature Conversations podcast is to capture knowledge and insights from remarkable people and to profile important issues for ecology and nature conservation. Today, I'm very fortunate to have Lydia Green, the founder and project director of the Manta Watch New Zealand Charitable Trust, join me on the podcast. Lydia is an experienced marine ecologist and marine educator. She has been researching manta rays since 2013 in Fiji, Mexico, the Maldives, and New Zealand. One of Lydia's focuses has been establishing a major monitoring and research program under the Manta Watch Trust, looking at Oceanic Manta Ray. And today, Lydia is going to tell us all about her amazing work with mantas and Manta Watch.
We have had manta come really close into shore, like way closer in that inner gulf. So as in just behind Tili Matangi, for example, or just opposite Gulf Harbour Marina in Whangaproa. And so now they're feeding and hanging out in shipping lanes and in really busy parts of the busiest part of the ocean in the country. So that's why it's really important for us to raise awareness that we have manta here and this is what they might look like, and B, if you do come across one, how best to deal with it and respectfully let it do its thing.
Today we have Lydia Green, who is the founder and project director of Manta Watch New Zealand Charitable Trust. Very excited to have Lydia on the podcast. Hello, Lydia.
Kia ora, how are you, Adam?
I'm very well today, thank you. How are things where you are?
Oh, I'm currently situated on Aotearoa, Great Barrier, so my happy place, and it's the sun shining and the chickens are scratching around in the gardens, so yeah, very happy.
Oh, that sounds idyllic. That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I'm really looking forward to discussing manta rays with you. You're the perfect person to be telling us all about it. Would you like to just start by telling us a little bit about yourself in terms of your professional background and how you came to work with manta rays?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I've had a really deep connection with the ocean ever since I was kind of old enough to understand what it was. So it's always, I knew that I'd be working somewhere within the marine space right from the onset. And I did a marine biology degree, and I've always been really obsessed with the bigger stuff, so sharks and rays. So I kind of just followed opportunities. So I've worked with lots of marine megafauna, so whales and dolphins, seabirds, lots of different shark species. And then I happened upon working with mantas kind of back in 2013 as part of another job that was in Fiji, and they piqued my interest, and then I started kind of doing different projects or volunteering and then working with other established projects, and then eventually kind of had the light bulb idea to create my own project here in Aotearoa.
That is so cool. What a great idea. And tell us a little bit. So you've set up Manta Watch New Zealand. Would you like to just explain what the mission is there and what you're doing?
Yeah. So it's something that we're really proud of. I set it up in 2017, and initially it was 100% citizen science. So the whole premise behind it was that I'd worked in the New Zealand marine space, everything from ecotourism, fisheries, industry, and everybody had stories about manta, but nobody was bringing all the information together. And so that was the real starting point for the project, because we were like, hey, there's obviously a lot around, but there's nothing tangible to work with here. So then, essentially it was kind of trawling YouTube and building a contact database, and then eventually getting people to submit sightings. And then in 2021, we got a dedicated research vessel. So then we've been actively researching the population as well. So we combine citizen science, research, education, and collaboration as well. And the wider reason for all this is to provide mantas and the cousins, the devil rays, kind of a sustainable future in Aotearoa. But then the overarching thing for us is to really connect Kiwis to that offshore space. It's such a magical, amazing place, that blue horizon. And so many people just, it's out of their sphere. So yeah, I see mantas as a beautiful kind of gateway drug for conservation. And so we're hopefully using these species to really just, bring that offshore space closer to everybody. And then the wider issues and potential challenges that environment faces.
That's so cool. I love the way that you've taken responsibility for doing this off your own bat and making such a significant contribution. It's really significant. So yeah, well done. Could you give us a bit of an overview of what a manta ray is?
Yeah, sure. So it's the largest ray in the world. So the species that we have here is the Oceanic Manta Ray, and they're the largest of the 3 species of manta ray. So they can get up to 7 meters across. They can weigh up to 2 tons. They have the largest brain of any fish. They're highly intelligent animals. And one of the key things that's really important for our project is that they're a globally endangered species as well. So a lot of populations around the globe are in serious decline due to fisheries, either targeted or bycatch, so like accidentally caught. And a big reason for that is the gill rakers. So they're a large filter feeding animal, and so gill rakers are really similar in the sense of like with shark fin, as in they've kind of created a marketable product. Another cool thing about mantas is that they're one of the most conservative of the shark and ray species. So that means that they're very slow growing, long lived, and give birth to a fully formed pup 1 to every 4 years. That's the thing that we're still trying to figure out. And so they're really vulnerable to any form of exploitation, really. So yeah, from a Aotearoa perspective, we knew that we had them here, but we just weren't quite sure how many we had and what they were doing here. And this is kind of like the end of the, I guess, geographical range. So we get them in tropical through to temperate waters. So learning about oceanic mantas in a temperate environment, so with common dolphins and gannets and Brutus whales, for example, like it's all really new to science.
Oh, that's so interesting. I have to be honest, until recently I was unaware that we had manta rays. I saw one in Deepwater Cove in Northland near the Bay of Islands last summer, and we were just blown away. It was this big, majestic, kind of diamond-shaped black object. Everyone in the anchorage was just captivated by it, and it was a real moment. And we looked it up, and we thought, gosh, yeah. And so we've reported that sighting to you, as people can do through your Manta Watch contact. But tell me a little bit, like, do we know about like how they're moving or migrating? Is there a population that's limited to New Zealand waters, or are they do they roam further afield? What do we know about that?
Yeah, so when we started the project, we just had lots of different question marks, and that was one of them. So one of the ways that we collect data, well, the 2 main ways we collect data basically is collecting photographic IDs. So that's each spot pattern on the belly of the manta ray that's unique to the individual, so we can track the individual over time. And then we also do quite a lot of satellite tagging, and the satellite tagging part of it really speeds up our understanding. So one of the first mantas that we were able to tag back in 2019, and that was over in Whangaroa, like out of there, just in the far north. There was a manta called Emmy, and she went straight through to the Southern Lau group in Fiji. It took us 66 days to travel over there, over 1,600 kilometers. And that was the first indication for us, looking at this population that we have in Aotearoa as a wider South Pacific population. And so instantly that means that all the potential threats and challenges that the species have have quadrupled at least. So they're protected species in New Zealand waters. As soon as they leave our EEZ, then they have no protections at all, and they're moving in and out of high sea fisheries, which is another big question mark for us. So we've managed to tag around 30 animals so far now. We're just coming towards the end of our permit. We're just finishing a 3-year permit. And what's apparent to us is we do have really good connectivity with that wider South Pacific. So we have mantas going towards Fiji, but also towards Tonga, Samoa. We've even had one manta that's just stayed within kind of like the upper temperate water and not going into the tropics, which is heading straight east and then coming back round. So from different tags, we know that we do have return migration. So we can say with confidence that at least some mantas that we've tagged go up and have a nice little holiday in the tropics and then cruise back down to the Hauraki Gulf in our kind of like late spring, early summer. Yeah, it's really cool. We're slowly starting to piece together a few of those answers to the questions. And in terms of what they're doing here, the main driver is food. So as in the summer, we have such productive waters. So one of the key questions that you find with migratory species is what's driving that massive migration. And we know from citizen science and direct observations, a lot of it is to do with that feeding activity. And they're just essentially gorging for between 4 and 6 months, like pretty hard out. And then I guess the really interesting part about this through observation is that we have courtship here as well. So that's kind of turned our understanding of these animals on its head, because they're actually breeding within New Zealand waters. So they are technically a native species as opposed to a tropical visitor, and then they'll go on holiday potentially and then come back. So yeah, it's really cool kind of looking at it that way. And the majority of female mantas that we come across are also in different stages of pregnancy, and then we've had some mantas that are heavily pregnant. So just pulling all that information together. So I guess in summary, it just shows that we've been able to prove through collecting this data that Aotearoa is very significant for this population, and this is kind of where its home, their home is, and then they'll shoot off to different places when the productivity of the ocean is slightly less.
And tell me, are there areas of New Zealand, say coastline, that you'd expect the mantas to be found in, or areas that you'd be unusual to find them in? Like, is it linked to like areas of warmer water, or what would you say about that?
So that's one of the reasons that the citizen science data is just so important. So it like instantly turns the project into a national project. And so people submitting their sightings with that location, we just get a way better understanding of overall distribution over the season. When I first started the project, I got hit with a lot of preconceptions from people that they wished to share with me. One of them being that they just stay very far offshore and they're impossible to study. Fast forward to now, and we've seen them in 5-meter water, just right off the coast. So they basically come they come right into shore, more so on like say steep, say where I am on Aotearoa, on that west coast there, it kind of drops down to 5-10 meters really quickly. There's no beaches, like you'll get mantas feeding like essentially against those cliffs when the food congregates there. And then on the mainland we've had them within half a kilometer of the coast as well. So they do come really close in, and as a consequence of that, they've been kind of reclassified as an inshore species during the summer. And you'll generally find them within that 30 to 50 meter water as opposed to further out. And and particularly in the Gulf. That's one of our key areas of survey, but through modelling that one of our master's students have done, kind of confirmed that the area is just really, really suitable for manta, because it's essentially one big food bowl and it's all relatively shallow, so it just kind of fills with krill and then attracts large numbers of manta in the season.
Wow, that's such a visual image, that food bowl of the Hauraki Gulf and having the manta rays there feeding.
Yeah.
Description. Yeah.
But yeah, I'll just add to that, wherever you get resident whales in Aotearoa, there's a really strong chance that you'll have manta there. So for example, in the Hauraki, we have resident Bryde's whales here. So that instantly tells us that there's enough food to sustain, kind of a small population of whales year round. And so the other side of it is we're not sure if all of manta migrate. I kind of feel that most of them might do, but then there might be a residual amount of mantas that stay because they have the resource to stay. But that's one of our other key questions.
Oh, that's so fascinating. Another question I'd like to ask you, like when we were in Deepwater Cove and we saw the manta, there was actually someone on a jet ski that was slowly heading towards it and was oblivious to the manta, and it just seemed quite concerning. Whether it all worked out okay, but it did strike me as quite a vulnerable sort of an animal. What would be the main threats to manta, but also what can we do to support them in terms of like when we're out in the water, and what's the responsible behaviour?
Yeah, so we've actually put together a best practice guide, so I can kind of give you the link so you can have that as part of this podcast. But yeah, for sure, jet skis and small fizz boats are a really big threat for manta. So when they're feeding, they're the most visible. But then they're, essentially like their eyes roll back and they're just so involved in that feeding space that you could get quite close and damage them that way. But they're most vulnerable when they're like cruising or resting just under the surface. So they'll usually about a meter or so under. They'll just be either warming up after a dive or digesting their food. And unless you're looking for them, they are invisible. And so yeah, we have had accounts of people hitting manta or erratic movements of vessels, hitting mantas with their props and things. So that's a big issue that we're trying to kind of front foot in terms of a best practice. And it's really key for us because on one hand we're asking people to collect data, but on the other side, we're wanting everyone to do it really safely and respectfully. If people swim with manta rays, which is one of the most amazing experiences, you don't really pose any threat because the mantas are just so fast that, you just look like a uncoordinated seal. So they'll just probably feel sorry for you and, leave you to it. But if you've got something of speed, then there's a little bit of an impact there. In terms of like natural threats, orca could potentially be a pretty decent threat for New Zealand manta rays. Something else that we look at when we're collecting all our data, so our data's it's all high resolution video and imagery. We look for injuries and bites. A few of them have like tiger shark bites as well, which kind of tells its own story, which is pretty cool. But yeah, like this year in particular, we have had manta come really close into shore, like way closer in that inner Gulf. So as in just behind Tili Matangi, for example, or just opposite Gulf Harbour Marina in Whangaparoa. So like way in. And so, and we've got the tagging data to kind of back that up. And so now, they're feeding and hanging out in shipping lanes and in really busy parts of, the busiest part of the ocean in the country. So that's why it's really important for us to raise awareness that we have manta here and this is what they might look like. And B, if you do come across one, how best to deal with it and respectfully let it do its thing. So yeah, we've put all those resources together, so you can find them on our website, or we'll put a link in the podcast too.
Yes, definitely. We can put that link in for people. Would you mind just quickly explaining if what the process is that you've offered if people spot a manta out there and they would like to report it? What simply do people do?
Yeah, so we've got a few different ways. We have a sightings form on our website that people can use, and then that automatically populates a sightings map. So that's something that you can just look at anyway, and it's got some cool filters on, so you can see exactly where and when people have been finding manta. You can also submit directly from email, so that's mantawatchnewzealand@gmail.com, and through our social groups as well. So the project has a Facebook page, but then also a community page, so people can directly put sightings on there. We're hopefully going to have a sightings app by next year, which will make the whole process a lot easier. But yeah, the key things that we're really keen to collect from people are the time, date, and location. So location would be like a GPS point, so as accurate as possible on that, and we can get the rest of the information around that in terms of water depth and all that kind of stuff just from that position. And then any photos or videos, we can learn so much from 5 seconds of video. We do a lot of work with drone. That's kind of one of the passive and high res ways that we can collect data. We understand that not everyone has a drone. But yeah, like a GoPro on a pole is really good. Or if you do get in, just getting as much footage of a manta encounter, we can learn so much. So we can get an ID potentially. So the bellies and the heads are unique. The behavior, we can tell if females are pregnant or not. So we can just get so much information really quickly from video. And again, that can just get emailed over to us. And if you find a new manta for our ID database, then you get to name them. So that's another sweet part of the deal. But yeah, for me, it's really important to it's a big engagement thing as well. So we'd like to, if people find manta and we get some decent data from it, then I can share that information back with that person, and so it just helps broaden that knowledge. And then the other way is just spread the word. So many people, particularly Kiwis generally, like it's a bit of a social science experiment, because people just believe that we don't have them here, and so if there's something kind of not quite right that you see in the water, they just assume that it's something else. So just spreading that message that we do have manta here, and that's the information that we'd love to collect, then that's really powerful also.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think many Kiwis are familiar with stingrays and maybe eagle rays, but certainly to me, the manta ray and seeing it was quite a surprise. So raising the profile is a really good idea, I think.
Yeah, and it's a pretty standard story. Like I'll have a yarn to someone that's been on the water for 30 years, and then I show them what to look for manta, and then they start seeing them. So yeah, any kind of, if people see like a flash of white at depth, or a funny like rounded fin, or even on those like glassy days, they actually create like a really cool bow wave from their back. It's kind of like this big triangle with like 5 lines. So that's sometimes the only way that we can find them, if they're not breaking the surface at all. So any weird kind of like water movements, and then if they're actively feeding, then there's a lot more splashing, and if there's lots of krill, then you'll see them fully throw themselves out of the water as they're feeding, which as you can imagine, makes it a lot easier to spot.
Sounds very dramatic indeed.
Yeah.
Hey, look, Lydia, that's so interesting. Before we wrap up, I would just like to put you on the spot a little bit, and I'd imagine that you're a person that spent a lot of time out in the field, not just with manta rays, but with your other research projects. And what would be really interesting is like to hear from you Do you have a memorable moment from your field work, maybe across your whole career, a moment when you've been out doing your work and something really amazing's happened, whether it's funny or sentimental, and you'd like to just share with the listeners that little moment that you had, which is probably very unique?
Yeah, sure. It is to do with New Zealand manta rays, but yeah, it kind of covers all those bases. Basically, our first season of study, we just didn't know whether it was possible to research this population. I had, like a handful of historic sightings from citizen scientists, and yeah, we just took a really big leap of faith. And they're big animals, but we're just, it's this big blue mass that it's just this featureless thing where magic could happen at any moment, or it might not. And yeah, kind of fast forward 2 months later, we'd managed to kind of find this manta hotspot, and yeah, we were just within the middle of the largest feeding aggregation of oceanic manta rays ever known. Like we could see them feeding nautical miles. Like there was just scores and scores and scores of them, and we haven't been able to see that again because it's just that combination of when the conditions are just right, being able to get out there as well. There's quite a few challenges, but yeah, just that whole thing of we took a gamble, and then we just saw something that we just never thought was possible for the species. And so we know that can happen over here. And that was in the Hauraki Gulf. So it just shows you how important this area is for manta.
Look, I'm so pleased that you're doing this. It's such important work. Keep it up, and hopefully this podcast just is a little boost on the side to help raise the profile of what you're doing. We'll certainly include any links you like in the descriptions just to help people connect. But yeah, I'd just really like to thank you so much for giving up your time today to talk on the podcast with me.
Yeah, no worries at all. I just want to add like one tiny little extra bit. So the New Zealand threat classification for manta is currently data deficient. And so that's why it's super important for us to gain as much information as possible to inform change, to hopefully upgrade that classification to endangered. So then it kind of lines up with the global classification. So yeah, every sighting just really counts towards that larger mahi. But yeah, thank you so much for your time and for the opportunity to share a little bit about oceanic mantas in Aotearoa.
You're so welcome, Lydia. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Lydia's work spans citizen science, research, education and collaboration to provide mantas and devil rays a sustainable future and to connect Kiwis to the ocean. She is leading a project working on a globally endangered species, boosting our understanding of the movements and behaviour of manta rays around New Zealand and across the South Pacific Ocean. Well done for the leadership that you're showing, Lydia, and taking responsibility for building support and awareness of Oceanic Manta Ray. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and all the best for your work with the mantas. If you enjoyed this podcast, remember to bookmark it so that you receive notifications for future episodes. If you'd like to support the production of the podcast, you can do so via my Patreon account. There is a link in this episode's description. I aim to release new episodes every 3 weeks, and your support would help me achieve this. Thank you so much for listening, and catch you in the next episode.